Hello everybody, Mobius Y here with another video for Stellaris Console Edition. Today's video is going to be discussing one of the unique features of the game, and this video's topic will be on special star systems and environmental hazards. This is a newer mechanic that was introduced to the Console Edition when the console version was upgraded to version 2.2. So before continuing with the video, if you'd like to see more Stellaris Console Edition content, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon to be notified when I upload a new video. I normally upload at least once per week as per my stream schedule, and sometimes more. Now this particular mechanics video will be slightly unscripted as they have been recently, but I still intend to cover the topic in great detail, so the hope is that by the end of this video you will have learned something. So let's get started by identifying which star systems I'm referring to as special star systems within the galaxy, namely black holes, pulsars, and neutron stars. Now these are all a kind of celestial body that will spawn in the galaxy, and you'll encounter in almost every game you play of Stellaris Console Edition. But these ones have additional effects applied in their local system that sets them apart from plain old stars. I'm also going to briefly touch on Nebulae, as they too create their own environmental hazard. So when the camera is in the system view, when you're looking at a star system in particular, you can activate additional options by pressing the X button or square on PS4, and you see near the bottom right in the notifications banner, you have a couple choices to rename the system if it's within your empire. You can lay a claim on the system if somebody else owns it, or you can restrict that system to stop your ships, both civilian and military, from entering that star system until you unrestrict it if it is an unowned system. So when you move the camera into a special star system, there is actually a fourth red icon that is displayed in those additional options, highlighting that it has some environmental hazards as well, like you can see here with this black hole system. So let's start with black holes. Black holes are typically formed as a result of the collapse of a very massive star at the end of its life cycle. Black holes have extremely strong gravity fields that prevent anything, including light, from escaping once the event horizon has been crossed. The gravitational waves emitted by black holes interferes with FTL drives, making it harder for ships to escape from combat. So black holes reduce combat disengagement chance by 50% and increase emergency FTL jump cooldown time by 50%. This makes it much more difficult for ships and fleets to escape destruction when on the losing side of a battle. If you or an opponent has a fleet in a black hole system, it's much more difficult for them to escape if they see the tide is turning and they want to actually preserve as much of that fleet as possible and emergency FTL jump away. Next up we have pulsars. And pulsars are highly magnetized neutron stars that emit beams of electromagnetic radiation. As the star rotates, the radiation beam is only visible when it is pointing directly at the observer. This results in a very precise interval of pulses, which sometimes is so exact that it can be used to measure the passage of time with extreme accuracy. The radiation emitted by pulsars interferes with deflector technology, rendering ships and station shields inoperable. So that means that pulsars reduce shields by 100% at all times for any stations or ships in the system. When ships leave the pulsar system, their shields still take time to recharge from 0 back to full capacity. They do not immediately jump back up to 100% once they are in a new star system. So this renders all shields inoperative for star bases, defense platforms, ships, you name it. If it's in a system with a pulsar, that pulsar is rendering those shields completely worthless. Last but not least, we have neutron stars for star systems. Now, neutron stars are incredibly dense stellar remnants that are sometimes created when a massive star suffers a rapid collapse and explodes in a supernova. Although their diameter is typically as little as 10 kilometers, their mass is many times greater than an average G-type star. The gravitational waves and radiation emitted by neutron stars must be carefully navigated around, slowing the sublight speed of ships. So the environmental hazard emitted by neutron stars is it slows the sublight speed of any ships passing through this system by 50%. That's a pretty significant reduction, slowing any ships down by a very large amount, even Even nimble corvettes can be slowed to not necessarily a crawl, but a pacely trot. So most bonuses to sublight speed would need to be combined to extreme measures in order to overcompensate the penalty that is enacted upon by neutron stars. There are several ways to increase sublight speed, but most of them are only 10 to 20% increments, whereas the neutron star is a 50% reduction, so that's a significant difference. And finally, we have nebulae, or systems within a nebula. So star systems that are located in a nebula are much more difficult to get sensor readings from, because the nebula itself blocks long-range sensors. Where you might normally be able to detect enemies up to 2 hyperlane jumps away from one of your military patrols, a nebula's star systems will not be penetrated by your sensors unless you have your own ships or star bases inside said nebula. I don't want to get too much into nebulae more than that, because the effects of a nebula are completely irrelevant once you've fully constructed a Sentry Array megastructure. So that's really all I want to touch on with nebulae. There's more important things that I want to go over regarding the other environmental hazards created by these star systems. So what do environmental hazards mean, and what is the good in knowing about them? More importantly, how can they be applied? The simple answer is this: they can be applied to 2 things: your empire's defenses and battle tactics. So straight up, black holes, pulsars, and neutron stars, they make very good choke points for defending your territory with bastion-type star bases. Fully upgraded star bases with hangar bays, missile batteries, and gun batteries, and various buildings to hamper the enemy, as well as a lot of defense platforms. These stations are really good for that. Not to mention that the other reason why these are good for this is that the environmental effects stack with some starbase buildings. For example, let's go back to that starbase there. The communications jammer is a type of building you can construct on your starbase. This reduces sublight speed by 20% and combat disengagement chance by 20%. That communications jammer combines really nicely with the neutron star, for example, which reduces sublight speed by another 50% for a total of a 70% sublight speed reduction. And it also combos with the black hole systems, which further increase the emergency FTL jump cooldown, so it takes longer for a losing fleet to leave, but the disengagement chance is reduced by another further 50%. So with the comm jammer, that's another 20%, so 70% reduced combat disengagement chance. That's pretty significant. Namely, a black hole with just a communications jammer makes it extremely unlikely that an enemy fleet will be able to escape a battle, especially if their ships are just rapidly getting destroyed. This makes it much easier to permanently destroy enemy ships from a weaker fleet, and making it much more difficult for them to rebuild. They will lose more ships and thus have to spend more resources in order to rebuild them. Now, neutron stars, they're actually a pretty good system to get into a fight with an enemy if you have a major weapons range advantage. For example, slowing the advance of, let's say, Prothoran Scourge fleets. This gives your own battleships much more time to shoot them with long-range tachyon lances and destroying far more of their ships before they can get in range themselves and shoot back. This also means some buildings on the starbase are rendered a little pointless to build in certain star systems. For example, you don't want to build a disruption field generator in a pulsar system, because the disruption field generator reduces the hit points of enemy shields by 20%. That's a completely wasted building slot in a pulsar system, because the pulsar drops their shields down to 0 already. This makes it so that bastions in a pulsar system can actually 100% focus on anti-armor and anti-hull weapons. You can design a separate defense platform, or even ion cannons, that are tailored for use in a pulsar system, where they have, for example, plasma cannons, which are strictly anti-armor and anti-hull, and have only armor modules for their own defenses, because equipping them with shields would be completely pointless. This also means that defense fleets can actually ambush attackers in a system next to a pulsar. Say an enemy fleet was flying in here from Castor to Aurum. They flew into Elatheon, and I could position my fleet here in Epsilon Indi to ambush them as soon as they jumped out from the pulsar system in Elatheon. This would cause the enemy fleet to have all of their ships with 0 shields, which, as I said, have to recover over time, whilst my fleet was safely here in a regular star system and is, in fact, at full strength. These are very useful tactics to be used against shield-heavy enemies such as the Unbidden or most Fallen Empire fleets, as it negates one of their strongest forms of defense, which is essentially their raw shield strength, and this allows you to tailor your defense fleet around anti-armor and anti-hull weapons to destroy enemy ships far more quickly and efficiently. So, in general, environmental hazards just offer one more layer to strategic warfare and battle tactics, especially when it comes to protecting your own space. Do remember that environmental hazards affect your own ships as well as the enemies. So if you're defending in a Neutron Star system and you have a bunch of really slow battleships, be aware that it'll be harder for them to get out of that system and evade reinforcements after taking on an enemy fleet initially. Corvettes will also be quite slow, and it's a similar thing with pulsar systems. If you're engaging an enemy fleet in a pulsar system, your own ships will have 0 shields, but as I said, you could resort to an ambush in the next system over, where your ships will retain their shields and they will have lost their shields. So these are all just things to consider, and it is somewhat not necessarily important, but useful to know these things. It's also a little bit easier to set up an ambush in a nebula because, as I said, enemy ships, enemy sensors, to be more specific, they cannot penetrate into a nebula from the outside. They have to be within the nebula itself. So one of the first systems in a nebula, for example, here in Firin Maiba, I could have a fleet lying in ambush here if there was an enemy fleet approaching from Yerba or Sisaja and trying to fly in here. They might not be aware that I have that I have my own defense fleet stationed there. So those are just some things to consider regarding special star systems and environmental hazards. I hope this video has been helpful for new and old players alike learning this aspect of the game, giving you some ideas behind how you can use these mechanics to your own advantage. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, or if you disliked it, then give it a thumbs down, and don't be shy to leave a comment with your thoughts and opinions. To see more videos such as this one, please subscribe to the channel, as there will be additional mechanics videos in the future, and don't forget to check out the links in the description below, such as my Twitch channel where I stream Stellaris Console at least once a week and can interact with viewers live whilst playing. You'll also find my Twitter feed, which is a great way to keep in touch with me and where I'll post important announcements. And lastly, you'll find a link to my own personal Discord for fans of my channel to freely join. It's not mandatory, but I highly recommend it. Thanks very much for watching. This is Mobius signing off for now, and I hope to see you again real soon.